Hello. We would like to open by extending our appreciation for all of you who have gathered here today. On behalf of our family, we cannot express the immense gratitude that we have for all the incredible friends who have rallied alongside us in these difficult days. We are here today to pay our final respects, to honor and to celebrate the life of Frank Charles Colby. It does not matter how you knew Frank, Dad, Papa, Pork Chop, Putz, Uncle Scrambles, Fireman Frank, Biff. He was a friend to all. It can be said without hyperbole that to know him was to love him. It is easy to see what a kind and caring soul he was by how much he is loved. Upon introduction, you would often hear, "I need a hug because a handshake just won't do." He never hesitated with a kind or encouraging word, always without judgment, because he had been there. You could screw up a million times, and Frank was still on your side. Frank was always on your side. At this point in time, we would like to call upon longtime family friend Will Fisman to share on Frank's memory.
I need these things. Well, holy cow, it feels like we've gone full circle here. Life really flashes by in a real hurry. It just seems like it wasn't that long ago. And I was standing up doing this, only it was at Frank and Mel's wedding. But in speaking of circles, although we're here today on behalf of Frank in the circle of life, we're putting one good man, hell of a good man, to rest. And we had a newborn, the little grandbaby today, and the little Frank, we'll call him right now. But anyhow, and I know Frank wouldn't mind me throwing that in because he's a proud grandfather, that's for sure. But today is about Frank. And anyhow, the first time I met Frank, I knew right off the bat he was a half a bubble off. Like, there wasn't a doubt about it. Like, I think this is kind of self-explanatory. He's a Hab fan, so he had a roof in his mouth, but he was missing a few shingles, so to say. But over the years, and got to know Frank through, we played, slow pitch together, a little snow pitch, a little rec baseball. We went on a little bit of a houseboat trip back years ago. Speaking of which, we were parked at Hunter Bay up at LaRange, and we're in the mouth of the bay. We couldn't get in any further than that with the houseboats, and we went to an abandoned camp up there, and we were sitting there, and there was another abandoned camp across the bay from us, and there was and we were in desperate need of some boat gas and boat oil. So Frank and a few of the boys that were on the trip, they ventured across the bay and got searching around and come back, and lo and behold, they had the boat oil with them, and everything was all pretty good. So we're sitting in the cabin and around a dimly lit fire, and anyhow, the boys are mixing up drinks. The crew were out having a little fun on the fishing trip. So anyhow, Randy Sawchuck was sitting there, and he mixes himself up a stiff shot of vodka and dumps in the mix and pounds her back little to know that it was the boat oil that Frank had put in the Coke bottle. So he was well lubed in more than one way for the rest of the trip. But anyhow, just a few little stories to kind of reflect on, Frank. I kind of entitled it, Who in the Hell Does That Kind of Shit? But anyhow, just a few little stories. We were, Frank was just the kind of the guy, like who does that kind of shit? Like you're standing there, and this is a true story. I think it was Jim, had a greasy booger hanging out of the corner of his nose, and so Frank looks at him in a weird way, and instead of telling him, he walked up, took his finger, and he plucks it right out of his nose and rubs it on his pants. Like, that's just the way Frank was, a little bit over the top. And then another little story about Frank is we were at the family wedding, and you know how they put the cameras out on the table at the wedding dance and stuff like that to take pictures. And so anyhow, like, who would do that kind of shit? But anyhow, Frank grabs the camera, and under the table, he takes a picture. He has his pants down and takes a picture of the cute little boy or the cute little fella, I should say, and the two little boys, you know, for the rest of share with the rest of the family. And I know Evan and Tyler and Chance are kind of sitting there like, I don't remember seeing that picture of us, but anyhow, I'll explain it to you later about who the cute little guy and the two boys are. And then another one, this is one that really gets to me, is, you know, when the family's getting ready in the morning for school and for work, and all the bathrooms are plugged up with the kids and the wife and getting ready to work and go to work, and anyhow, in desperation, goes out to the garden patch and has a shit. And the big thing is this is on an unfenced lot in the corner, and it's in the middle of the morning rush hour. And the part that really gets me is there's a perfectly good garage there. I'm sure they had a 5-gallon pail or an ice cream pail in there that he could have used and been a little bit more discreet, because I don't think the radishes were covering a whole lot while he was out there. You know, and I know that the picture I'm painting right now is, you know, maybe not the prettiest one, but you know, that's who Frank was. You know, you meet a lot of people throughout the course of your life, and you know, but then there's characters. And sorry. And Frank was a character. Anybody that knows him knows that Frank was a character. But in saying that, now I ask, you know, in saying that, sorry, I ask, like, who in the hell was a better parts man that ever worked for Canadian Tire than what Frank was? Like, I mean, that guy was amazing. Like, I remember going in there numerous times when we were working, needing parts and stuff, and I remember one particular time I went to the back, and he's standing there, and I said to Frank, I said, we need a starter for a 1981 3/4 ton Chevy. And Frank was standing there, and he goes, that's 2634-921. He says, and looks it up, yeah, we got 3 of them, here you go. And I know Frank's sitting there right now, you stupid idiot, that wasn't the part number, but he was good. Like, I mean, he was one of the best guys that ever worked for Canadian Tire. He was amazing back there. He was, you know, he was the guy that you seen, like, out, you know, fighting fires and out, like, you know, and he stayed there till his health allowed him, you know, as long as his health allowed him to. And he was the guy that, you know, he just had very little. He didn't ask for nothing, but he gave it his all. And he's the guy that stood beside his wife through thick and through thin. He loved her dearly, just as he loved his children, his family, and his friends more than anything in the whole world. And he's the guy that all he wanted to be was loved. And right now I just want to tell him, Frank, you were loved. We all love you.
Thanks, Wilf. It's easy to see what an incredible friend Frank was and what rich memories he has left behind. Although he was sober for 17 years, many of us have been served drinks by Frank just on the other side of these very doors. He loved bartending. Frank enjoyed a good time, and he enjoyed watching others have a good time. Gerald Oakrey could not be here today. He and Frank were friends for more than 20 years. Gerald has been able to share a video with us to provide words of remembrance for his best friend, Frank.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gerald Oakrey. I'd like to share a little bit that I know about Frank Colby. I am going to miss him a great deal because we were quite close and we just enjoyed doing things together. What I can tell you about Frank is that he was a very, very dedicated family man. His family was the number one thing to him, and he just loved every last one of the members of his family. He was also a strong community member. He was a firefighter. He's bartender at the Kindersley Inn and at the Elks. He gold judged for the Junior Clipper hockey games, and he just loved being around and in the community, meeting people and chatting and having coffee. Frank was also a very avid sports fan. He liked watching the Junior Clippers. His favorite team in hockey was the Habs, which a lot of people kidded him about, but that's okay. Everybody has to have a favorite. And he was just genuinely interested in a lot of different sports. I enjoyed watching football games with him, and we just had a lot of fun together with that. He was also very proud of the fact that he attained 15 years of sobriety. Frank was an alcoholic, and he was proud that he could conquer that disease and remain sober for 15 years. And I'm proud of him and was proud of him for that as well. He was a very helpful man. Anybody needed help, Frank would volunteer. He would come at a run anytime he was asked. I remember a few times that I asked, he helped me build a garden in our backyard, hauling wheelbarrows full of compost and topsoil to fill that garden space. And he just enjoyed the whole day. He helped me move a barn full of ceramic molds. That's not an easy task. And he was up to the task and helped out, and it was really appreciated. And most of all, I really enjoyed the time that he and I went to Winnipeg. We helped a fellow clean out his shop of auto body supplies and tools so that the man could retire. And Frank met him and his son, and they had a great day. They chatted, they got to know each other a bit, and Frank was appreciated in that space. Now, Frank was also very willing to learn. Anytime that people are doing things, he likes to be there. He likes to see how it's done, that kind of thing. And he was always wanting to know different things and to learn things. The thing I loved about Frank the most is that he was just a genuine person. He didn't put up airs. He didn't make any excuses. Frank was Frank. And I'm certainly going to miss him. Frank, I know you're there. Let's go for coffee. Rest in peace, my bud, and may God bless your soul.
I never had a good relationship with my father, but I had a pretty cool dad. Frank may not have been my father, but he was my daddy. Sometimes the thing you've been searching for your whole life is right there by your side all along, and you don't even know it. I'm glad that I knew it. Frank wasn't just a good dad, he was a great dad. And he was shaping up to be an even better grandfather. Being Papa was a profound source of pride in his life. With grandson Harrison already picking up on his easygoing nature and goofy grin, we'd like to call upon the man that Frank is the most proud of, a man who I believe is very similar to his father in many ways. He is definitely a junior to Frank, despite not being a Habs fan, but we'll let that slide. Here with a eulogy to honor his father's memory is Frank's son, Evan Frank Colby. Here's Biff Jr.
This isn't going to be easy. My dad, Frank. Frank, I mean, you said most of them already, but there's even more. Frankster, Frankie, Frank the Tank, Biff, and Pork Chop, and Scrambles, and so many more. Where does a guy even begin to start when a Titan with that many nicknames falls? Trying to describe Frank in one word is nearly impossible. But if I had to sum it up, that word would be safe. And selflessness. That's two. The kind of man who would be the first to drop everything to come and give you a hand, no matter what. Frank was truly larger than life, with an even larger heart. He never had a complaint, and was just happy to be around. Whenever a problem arose, he was the glue that held everything together. The kind of guy who would give you a hug, like Tyler said, because a handshake just wouldn't do. If the world lived like Frank, then everyone would be a hell of a lot happier, and it would be a hell of a lot of a better place. My father was full of unconditional love to his wife, his children, his grandchildren, his family and friends, my family and friends, my brothers and sisters' family and friends, who he always considered his own. And I guarantee you, if you look around this room, everyone here will have a Frank memory or story to share. I look forward to hearing all of them. All my dad did was give, give, give. Never, ever, ever once asked for anything in return. Besides a smile, just to remember to pay it forward. It was his life mission to make all those around him happy. And he always did one hell of a job. He showed me how to live each day to the fullest and be happy and enjoy what you have. Very thankful for the time I had with my dad. I'm very proud, very honored to be his son. Told you it wasn't going to be easy. Frank Charles Colby was born November 10th, 1963, Dawsland, Saskatchewan, to Charles and Janetta Jean Colby. Their second son following their older brother Brian, who was 12 at the time. At the age of 5, Frank lost his father due to a tragic farming accident, which caused a little bit of a rift for many years. Things were not always perfect, but that never stopped Frank from trying and always being there whenever his mother or brother needed him. Frank didn't have it easy growing up, and somehow he still managed to have a twinkle in his eye and the know-how to have a good time. He always craved adventure. When Frank was 8, he found a best friend in Curtis Kerman, a friendship that lasted a lifetime. Kurt and Frank, or Hank, as Kurt called him, were inseparable. He was my dad's best man the day of his wedding. In their younger years, they would spend their time biking down gravel roads between their houses and just enjoying each other's company and making fun from nothing. Best friends make life better. When they got a little bit older, their adventures got a little wilder. Kind of stories you can't tell in a setting like this. Now they would spend their time driving around, drinking beers, chasing girls, skidooing, drinking beers, going to school dances, and grads to chase girls and drink more beer. Bo, and lots of it. Curtis moved to Champion Lake when the boys were in their teens, so they would either drive their cars or ride their skidoos back and forth to visit each other. Frank's pride and joy, before we came along, of course, was his A3 or A4. We couldn't remember the year precisely or exactly, but it was a Trans Am, done proper with murals on each side and a suiting name, Lucifer's Dream. He loved that car. My dad had a lot of nice cars, believe it or not, in his time. Totaled all of them, naturally. Every one of them had a pretty bad fate. But Lucifer's Dream was his favorite. He had been telling me for years he was going to own that car again before he died. I promised him we'd be getting two. He would drive that bad boy to and from Champion Lake all the time to go visit his buddy. Cruising back roads, chasing that tail. Partying in the Plenty Pits, Crawford Grove, Sand Hills, you name it, Frank was there to show everyone a good time. In the later half of the 80s, Frank moved to Kindersley and decided to set up shop. He made friends with my Uncle Wade first, and then worked his way into the circle with my uncles Jim, Butch, and Wolf. Played on the same softball team with some super neon short shorts, which you may or may not have seen in the slideshow, which will be going later too. Those boys grew close. Then he met Jim and Butch's sister, the woman who would become my mother, thanks to their mutual friend, Monica McCrae. She thought Frank and Melly would make a great pair. My dad fell in love with her instantly. The night of their first date, my dad actually didn't show up. Trying to ease his nerves, he ended up passing out on the couch. Monica took my mom over there and beat the piss out of him, but managed to get him a second date. On said second date, Frank got the flu and had to spend the weekend on my mom's couch. Frank woke up to a 3-year-old freckle-faced kid with spiked hair and a lisp, asking, "Are you going to be my new dad?" Wouldn't you know it, turned out to be. He went on to treat Tyler and Chance as his own. Never once distinguished that they weren't his. It's because of Frank that Bryn and I never knew what the words half-brother were supposed to mean when people talked about our brothers. Melanie was the love of Frank's life, and on August 25th, 1990, they got married in a beautiful backyard wedding surrounded by all of their family and friends. When my father married my mother, he was the happiest man in the world. On that day, he told my mom he gained everything he ever wanted: a wife, a family, and a sense of belonging. He'd always been grateful to my mother's family for taking him in as his own. In the following 5 years, our family would be completed with the birth of his son, me, Evan Frank, and his daughter, Bryn Melanie, little Biff and his princess. Frank was born to be a father, and he went above and beyond raising us. In case you haven't noticed or don't know who I am Frank 2.0. We were two peas in a pod, man, and I see him and my sister every day. Frank was a party animal. He didn't drink every day of the week, but when the weekend hit, he went balls to the wall. I've heard the stories, and they're crazy. He was no saint by all means, and sometimes he made some bad calls. We all do. What was special about Frank was that it's important to remember and know that he noticed them and took it upon himself to change his ways for the better. On August 10th, 2000, my dad joined AA and never, ever looked back. My dad was sober for 17 years as of August this year. And he felt, as we all did, that was one of his greatest accomplishments. We were so proud of him. The fact that he had to put up with us kids, his wife, and her wacky family, and the everyday struggles that his life even bartending here at the KI or the Elks Hall shows you the strength and willpower my dad had. My dad loved nothing more than spending time with his kids. My favorite thing to do with my dad when I was young was go bottle picking. It was a great way to spend the day with somebody you love. We would drive down back roads around Kindersley. Bryn would later join us when she was old enough. And he would tell us stories and just listen to some tunes. Usually the Cars, Petty, or AC/DC. We would drive 60 until we saw a glimmer in the ditch, just taking it easy, and we'd stop. We'd then walk that ditch a bit and come up with more bottles than you could actually imagine. And sometimes even a $5 bill, which is like $1 million to a kid when you're 8. So when it was all said and done, we'd take those bottles down, get some cash. He would take us to the corner store and buy just a ridiculous amount of 5-cent candies. And some other snacks, like potato chips. Then we go home, pig out, watch movies, and pass out on the couch. My dad loved falling asleep halfway through movies. And his potato chips. Holy hell. I have never heard anyone eat any louder than my dad when he's eating potato chips. Seriously. Frank loved all kinds of sports. He just loved competition and just enjoyed everything about it. He even played broomball. He was number 29 after his idol Ken Dryden. Though he couldn't skate, my dad loved hockey the most, and he was a die-hard Habs fan, if you couldn't tell. He lived and breathed the Habs and loved taking me to and from hockey when I was growing up. He was an awesome hockey dad. An even better dad for taking me to all the Oilers versus Habs games over the years. We went to a few. Around the time I was 13 years old, around the time you never listen to your parents and think they have no idea what the hell they're talking about, mine and my father's relationship started to change. Frank was the dad of all dads growing up. Don't get me wrong, I was always his little buddy. But now we were becoming friends. Best friends. He was and will forever be my best friend. We had the greatest friendship ever crafted. We went to concerts after concerts, seeing his favorite bands. We actually got a pretty legendary Fleetwood Mac story from one of our Edmonton trips. Again, I can't tell you that right now. Oilers versus the Habs annually. We swapped crazy party stories and compared scars. 3 a.m. when I was drunk or not. McDonald's runs because my stomach was never satisfied. And of course, there are the many, many inappropriate stories that may or may not ever see the light of day. I'm 25 years old. I'm pretty sure my mom would get me for 3 months. We had fun. We had so much fun. In 1996, my dad joined the fire department. And one thing I can tell you is that my dad was a very proud firefighter. He took the duty that came with it very seriously. He felt no better honor than putting himself out there and on the line if it meant saving another person's life. It's a sad day when your dad runs out of the house Christmas morning responding to a call. But then you realize how much of a hero he is. After 16 years of service, Frank retired and hung up his suit. Honestly, though, if it were up to my dad, he would have stayed with the fire department until his last breath. Sometimes your health is more important. 8.5 years ago, in August of 2009, my dad took me and 2 of my best buds to an AC/DC concert. My dad was so pumped to see his all-time favorite band again. I often joked that they rocked so hard they gave my dad a heart attack 6 days later. Why? Because 6 days later, my dad suffered a heart attack. As you know, like I just said, my dad was a proud firefighter, and he was on the scene fighting a fire when he went down. It was the most surreal and scariest moment experienced by me and my entire family. My dad died twice that day. Thanks to the hard work of some amazing people and my dad's stubbornness, he came back to us. He still had so much left to give. And give he did. We got him back for 8.5 more years. And in that time, he was able to see his son and daughter graduate, see the birth of his granddaughter and grandson, and spend every day being thankful for life and for his family. No one was more thankful or appreciative than Frank. Starting in 2014, me and my dad started to attend Rock the River in Saskatoon. Bryn joined the tradition in 2016. We saw so many cool bands from the 70s and 80s, which were his cup of tea and therefore my cup of tea. My dad had nothing but the best taste in music. And being able to stand next to him, up front and center every year, and see him in his element, singing every song and having the time of his life, is something I will cherish for the rest of my life. We were going to see Nazareth this year. He was so excited. He already bought the tickets. My dad did not deserve to die. We were robbed. And he was robbed. It's not fair, and it never will be fair. But I will not let my father die in vain. We will carry on his legacy and live our lives the way we were meant to, because he wouldn't have it any other way. Yes, it might feel a little more empty around here, but he'll never be far from our thoughts. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you can and cannot do. It doesn't matter how powerful or how powerless you are. What matters is that you try. Live life to the utmost, because you never know what tomorrow brings. I'm going to miss that guy. My dad collected newspaper clippings of poems. He's sentimental like that. And I'm glad I'm the same way. I'm going to read you one of his favorite poems that he had cut out and I found in his desk the other day. It's the actual newspaper clipping. When tomorrow starts without me. When tomorrow starts without me, and I'm not there to see, all filled with tears for me. I wish so much you wouldn't cry the way you did today, while thinking of the many things we didn't get to say. I know how much you love me, as much as I love you, and each time that you think of me, you know you miss me too. And when tomorrow starts without me, please try to understand that an angel came and called my name, and took me by the hand, said my place was ready in heaven far above, that I'd have to leave behind all those I dearly love. But as I turned to walk away, a tear fell from my eye. For all of my life, I'd always thought I didn't want to die. I had so much to live for, so much yet to do. It seemed almost impossible that I was leaving you. I thought of all the yesterdays, the good ones and the bad. I thought of all the love we shared and all the fun we had. If I could relive yesterday, even for a while, I'd say goodbye and kiss you, and maybe see you smile. But then I fully realized that this could never be, for emptiness and memories would take the place of me. When I thought of worldly things I might miss come tomorrow, I thought of you And when I did, my heart was filled with sorrow. But when I walked through heaven's gate, I felt so much at home. And God looked down and smiled at me from his great golden throne. He said, "This is eternity, and all I've promised you. Today for life on earth is past, but here it starts anew. I promise no tomorrow, but today will always last. And since each day is the same way, there's no longing for the past. You have been so faithful, so trusting, and so true. Though there were times you did some things you knew you shouldn't do. But you have been forgiven, and now at last you're free. So won't you take my hand and share my life with me? So when tomorrow starts without me, don't think we're far apart. For every time you think of me, right here in your heart, I miss you, Dad. Thank you for everything." We're going to take, usually around these things, we usually do like a prayer or something, but not for Frank. We're going to take a minute and sit and listen to one of his favorite songs and his favorite bands.
Loving you isn't the right thing to do. How can I ever change things that I feel? If I could, maybe I'd give you my world. How can I, when you won't take it from me? You can go your own way. Go your own way. You can call it another lonely day. You can go your own way. Go your own way. Tell me why everything turned around. Packing up, checking up, so you wanna do. If I could, maybe I'd give you my world. Open up, everything's waiting for you. You can go your own way. Go your own way. You can call it another lonely day. You can go your own way. Go your own way.
Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac, one of Frank's favorite songs. Thank you, Evan. A beautiful eulogy. One of the hardest burdens with losing someone who is so loved is that you feel as though you will never be able to pay them an adequate tribute. None of us feel that our words are sufficient. We take a year to plan a wedding, but a funeral has to be planned in a week. Well done, Evan. Dad was always immensely proud of the open and caring man that you have become. I do not think that I have ever seen anyone love someone as fiercely as Frank loves my mother, Melanie. They had 27 happy years together. The strength of that love and bond is reflected in their amazing children. We now call upon Frank's princess, his daughter Bryn, to pay a final tribute to her dad.
I've sat for the past few days trying to find a way to describe a man worth a million words in a few short minutes, and I found that it's impossible. The dictionary doesn't hold enough words for me to be able to string together something to describe the man my dad was to me, but I owe it to him to try. My dad was the type of guy who would do anything to get someone to smile. Being raised by someone such as him gave me the chance to see what true love and sacrifice is. I'm not going to stand up here and say my dad was perfect. He faced his fair share of battles, but he always came back out on top, and he always chose his family over everything else. He knew what was important, and he knew how to achieve the goals he had always wanted. My dad would do anything to spend time with me. He would take me to the park almost daily for 8 years, and take me bottle picking. But the most precious memory I share of my father, prior to my teenage years, was him allowing me to do his makeup and hair, back when he had hair. I remember one day specifically, I had done him all up. I had painted his nails, curled his hair, and had a full face of makeup. But he got a fire call, and he had to go. He was running out of the house with his washcloth to his face, and he was like, "I'll be back, Brittykins, and you can do it all over again." He had no shame, only pride. He was a proud man, and he never stopped telling me he loved me, believed in me, and was proud of me. The Kindersley Fire Department, paramedics, hospital, and the staff at Royal University Hospital gifted my father 8.5 more years. And he spent every single day after August 30th, 2009, waking up on the thankful side. His feet would hit the floor, and he would be prepared for the day. I think my dad had a mental checklist of things he had to do. Brush his hair to cover up all those bare spots. Listen to some AC/DC. Work and provide for the fam. Answer every single phone call that ever came his way. And if that person on the other side of the phone was needing a ride or some 7-Eleven candy, he would be there within the next 10 minutes to accomplish whatever was asked of him. I remember calling him quite a few times when I was babysitting and asking if he could go buy me some candy to get me through the night shift, and he would do it every single time. My dad never let me down. And if he ever thought that there was a chance that I would be upset by an outcome, he would do anything in his power to change it so I would be smiling. My dad was a fighter, and he fought until his very last heartbeat. He wanted to stay, but the battle was unable to be won this time. Once again, the Kindersley paramedics, hospital, air ambulance, and the staff at St. Paul's Hospital allowed us to be there with him and to say goodbye. The goodbye was unwanted, but it was necessary, and I count my stars that I was there to hold his hand. The only thing I have been able to find comfort in these past few days has been listening to stories from people who knew him. There isn't anything that can really be said during times like these that will ease the pain and suffering, but we're going to invite you all to stay around and tell us stories about who Dad was to you, Listening to these stories creates a comfort around us. It's healing to hear about the man that my dad was and continued to be. This is going to be a celebration of life because this is how my dad wanted to be remembered. We're going to celebrate the man he was and a life well lived. Much too short, but so full of life.
Thank you, Bryn. Dad is incredibly proud of you. And he certainly knew how much you loved him because you celebrated him every day. Life and death are seldom logical. Stories often have happy endings. It's life that throws you for a loop. We cannot control what happens to us. We can only control how we react to it. It can seem so easy to lose hope. But hope is like the sun. If you only believe it when you can see it, you'll never make it through the night. Frank's passing may be premature. It may be unexpected. But it leaves us with one final lesson on the brevity and frailty of life. Taken too soon, he continues to remind us how important it is to treasure and cherish every moment of every day. Frank knew the value of life all too well, and it showed in his example. He was just so damn happy to be here. Always glad. Despite his warnings, we feel cheated, we feel robbed. Things have gotten rocky, things have gotten rough. His selfless, forgiving spirit played a large role in the cohesion of our family. He was the glue that held us all together. Frank reined in the chaos. Frank had patience beyond patience. It is only in his absence that we realize how crucial his role was. We all feel lost without him. But it is imperative that we follow his example to be a reassuring presence to each other. In his absence, it is important that we remember that life goes on and there are still duties to fulfill. Frank always answered the call. Whether it was a fire alarm in the middle of the night, a fire alarm on Christmas morning, Frank was always of service. He worked tirelessly. He was a shoulder to cry on, always encouraging, always kind. Frank always answered the call. He's really not dead as long as we remember him. Death is that state where one only exists in the memory of others. No one is ever really gone. Frank had no fear of death. He had no need for it. He was always grateful, proud, and felt blessed with what he had. He often said that his life was truly fulfilled. And if we truly want to honor the memory of Frank, we can follow his lead and pay tribute to him by following his example. Live now. Now is the most precious time. Now will never come again. The new year is upon us, and I challenge everyone here today to live like Frank. We live in a world where you can have a hot food in under a minute, and we tell a microwave to hurry up. Perpetually rushed, impatient. I encourage you all to take the time If you're running late, it's fine. Take the extra 20 minutes. Spend time with the people who are important. Take the time to say the things that matter. Every time could be the last time. Frank lived like it was. We should all be so lucky. Truly proof that happiness is a decision. We will be relocating chairs and tables and serving coffee. We invite you to please stay and approach us to share your memories and your stories of Frank. Frank believed that before going to bed every night, forgive everyone and sleep with a clean heart. Frank certainly slept with a clean heart. Always. Everyone says that love hurts, but this is not true. Loneliness hurts. Rejection hurts. Envy hurts. Losing someone hurts. Everyone gets these things confused with love. But in reality, love is the only thing in this world that covers up all the pain and makes someone feel wonderful again. Love is the only thing in this world that does not hurt. In my effort to honor Frank's legacy, I am going to try and be at least half the dad that he didn't have to be. Bye, buddy.
Like Tyler said, we're gonna take about 15 minutes here, clear out some chairs, and there's coffee at the back there if you guys would like to get some. And we would love it if you guys could just hang out for a while, just tell us a couple stories. Like Brent said, it's helped us get by and laugh, which is what everyone needs right now. So we're gonna throw on a song. That was Frank's last wish. Well, not his last wish, but a wish for this day that he knew was coming. It's very soothing. It's not what you would usually hear at a funeral, but it is my dad. Thank you, everyone, for coming and showing us how much Frank meant to you.